Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Tex. Today's Monday, January 21st, 2019. Of course, the market is closed today for Martin Luther King Day, so taking a little time flipping through some charts and just getting prepared for this coming week. So I will go over the market with you in this video and some of the stocks that I'm going to be watching. I'll also go over my favorite list of stocks from my little custom category I made here, FANG T, to include Tesla and Nvidia along with the typical FANG stocks. So talking about the market, in my last videos, I talked about the fact that I was looking at possibly taking a short on the SPY if we could reject off the 50 SMA, and right above that you've got the 50 fib. Since then, news on China tariffs have come out when Steven Mnuchin basically said they were looking at easing, or they had discussed easing the tariffs in order to encourage a trade deal. And then another senior White House official came out and said that no, there was no such talks, and that they were still a long ways off from any kind of a deal. But the market ripped regardless, and it ripped right through the 50 SMA, right through the 50 fib, and right through the 61.8 fan. The fib fan here as well. So I think that at this point, we will definitely go ahead and make a push up here to this major descending trend line. And right above that, you got the 200 period moving average. The problem is, now volatility has definitely decreased. It's gone down significantly. The problem is that now that the market is reacting to that positive, I guess, pump that Steven Mnuchin did to the market there, it is pricing in a good result from the China tariffs negotiations. Okay, so if they cannot get a good result from these, these negotiations before the timeline expires, I think the volatility is going to come back in, and the market's definitely going to have a significant pullback. Now, without that volatility, I don't expect that we're going to have a significant pullback back down to lows. We're going to need volatility for the market to really fall apart and get back down there. But it could be coming into alignment because we are starting to price in that good news on the tariff. So if that doesn't, work out, then the market's definitely going to have a significant pullback. Plus, you've got the government shutdown that so far the market hasn't really cared much about, but the longer it goes on, the more likely it's going to really start affecting the economy. I know TSA agents are calling in sick left and right, and they're going to reach a breaking point where everything's just going to get shut down. So that means that all flights will be completely shut down, and it will be pure chaos if basically, the airports have to shut down because there's no TSA agents to clear people through security. If it comes to that, and Trump and the Democrats cannot come to some kind of an agreement, and the government remains shut down, it's definitely going to be bad for the market. So we'll have to see. Obviously, so far it hasn't cared, but I think from a technical perspective, we should easily make a push up to this descending trend line. Now, without volatility, I think what's most likely to happen is we'll pull back off of that trend line, pull down here to the 50 fib, and then make a push higher. We could also see it possibly push up to the 200 SMA first, kind of, tap over the trend line just a little bit, and then make a pullback. But without the volatility, I'm not going to be expecting a significant pullback down. We're going to need that volatility to come back in. So I might still be looking at shorting the market off of this trend line. And I do like the idea that kind of falls right in line with a nice even number right at 270. And you could have a nice stop somewhere right around the 200 SMA. So in case it pushes over that trend line, look for it to reject off that 200 SMA and try and get a pullback on it down here to the 50 fib. If that holds as strong support and the market wants to push off of that, then I'd say it's likely that we could break over that trend line and break the downtrend. So we will have to see, but this week I really expect the market to continue pushing higher up towards that trend line. So I'm going to be holding off on any short positions just yet. I want to see what happens when we get up here. You can see I have an alert set to let me know the second that we touch that trend line that I have drawn there. All right, so that's the market. We'll go over some of my favorite tickers here. We have Amazon. So on Amazon, it's been having significant trouble right here with this 200 period moving average, as you can see. On Wednesday, tapped it, pulled right off of it. On Thursday, couldn't even get up to it. On Friday, we managed to get over it, tried to hold it, and then failed it. Okay, so on Amazon, I would say that if it can get over the 200 SMA and hold it as strong support and wants to push higher off of it, I would definitely look at taking it long with a profit target somewhere around the 1760 area. That's right where you've got the 61.8 fib. You've also got overhead resistance from this day when Amazon gapped up really big, topped out, and then rolled over. So I like that those two are lining up with each other. It could possibly reject just before that because you've got the half number there at 1750. But if it can hold that 200 SMA and wants to push higher, I think it's realistic for Amazon to push up to the 1766. We do have to remember that Amazon has earnings coming up here right around the corner. Looks like about a week and a half or so. I'm not sure of the exact day, but we can take a look at that real quick. It looks like it's on January 31st, so it's about 10 days away. Yeah, so it's next Thursday, not this week, right? So Amazon could make a little push higher before it actually, runs into earnings. But like I said, this one's going to be pretty straightforward. Over the 200 SMA, holding it long, rejecting the 200 SMA, short. So Amazon could easily make a pullback down here to one of these trend lines. This trend line is going to be the more valid one. It's a long-term descending trend line. This trend line was just, you can see how it's kind of respecting it here, and then it broke over it. So I'm leaving it on my chart because Amazon could make a pullback to one of these trend lines and then bounce off of them. So I'm going to leave them there. But like I said, the key on Amazon is going to be the 200 period moving average. Facebook, I talked about in my last video, was looking bullish. Nice little flag formed right here just under this major resistance that goes all the way back to the Cambridge Analytica where it sold off and bottomed out. The trade idea was solid. It broke over that resistance level and made a huge push up, and then more negative news came out on Facebook and it just fell apart. So at this point, I'm not really liking Facebook too much for a long. It's possible that it could make another pushback over that resistance. You've got a pretty significant pocket right in here. You'll have a little resistance here, a little bit, just nothing really significant. But you do have a significant pocket here that Facebook could get in and fill. That's roughly about 9 points or so from the resistance area there. So it's but just as easily as it can make that pocket fill here, another bad news piece can come out and Facebook can really fall apart. So Facebook's not one I'd be interested in swinging, but I will watch it for a possible day trade setup. At this point, I would want to see it get over this resistance, hold it as solid support for a long. Otherwise, rejecting of this 150.76 area, I would be looking at a short to see it come back down. Okay, so we'll just have to play the charts. And obviously keep an eye on the market and see what the market's doing. Of course, I have Google on my FANG list, but I never really trade Google very much. I should probably look at it a little bit more, but I'm going to switch over here to Netflix. So Netflix did finally sell off. You can see that after their earnings came out, had a significant gap down. It's getting close to the 200 moving average. And just below that, we've got the 50 fib. So I think what Netflix could do, sorry if I called it Facebook a second ago, but I think what Netflix can do is it could continue pushing off, possibly bounce off the 200 moving average or bounce off of the 50. I don't think that Netflix is really going to fall apart. I think that it's still going to be strong. I think a lot of people who miss this move have FOMO and they're looking for a pullback to get in on this. I read that some analysts were saying that a good dip down to the 330s area is a place to consider getting in Netflix. So most likely the herd is going to follow some of that advice, and there's probably going to be a lot of people sitting in this 330 area trying to get in on Netflix. So I would expect this area to be strong support, especially from these days here. But if that cracks, Netflix will definitely come down lower. So I would keep an eye on the 200 SMA and this 327 to 330 area because you've got that 50 fib sitting right there. Okay, so Netflix at this point, I would actually it's already made a significant move down here. It could easily fall apart, but it's got support here. So I would be keeping an eye on Netflix to see if it can hold somewhere in this area and possibly push higher. Then we'd be looking at testing this trend line again, and above that, the 61.8 fib. Moving on to NVIDIA. So I'm actually kind of liking NVIDIA for a possible long here. You can see that it broke over the 50 SMA and it broke over the 38.2 fib. It had a nice little pullback here, made a higher low and pushed higher. So at this point, especially if the market is in alignment and the market wants to go higher and push up to that trend line, I think NVIDIA could easily make a push up to the 50 fib. And then above that, we've got the 61.8 fib, which is in alignment with the high here that it made after the huge gap down on their last earnings. Now, I'm not sure when NVIDIA earnings are coming out. It's probably going to be relatively soon, but it's not right around the corner as in this week. So I think that NVIDIA could easily make a push up higher this week, especially if the market wants to push higher. So I like NVIDIA for a long. I would look for a possible pullback down to the 50 SMA or maybe this 38.2 fib to hold as support, grab it long there, and ride it up to the 50 fib, and possibly even looking at getting up to the 61.8 fib. Obviously not in one day, but it's looking good for a continuation move on the long side, so I would keep an eye on NVIDIA. Now I'll go over Tesla in just a minute because my top watches that I want to keep an eye on going into this coming week and the week after that, I do have Tesla on that list. So going down that list, I have Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs had blowout earnings, huge, absolutely huge gap up and huge move up, just blowing right through some of these fib levels that I've drawn from the start of a sell-off here and this descending trend line down to lows. Okay, so we are now bumping right into the 61.8 fib. We've had 3 consecutive green days. Now, it's possible that Goldman Sachs could have a little bit of a pullback off of that 61.8 fib, come down to the 50, hold that as support, and push higher. But I still think that I still think it could go higher. Now, right above where we are now on that fib, we do have, and I kind of marked it just with a red line here, but this red line is the 200 SMA on the weekly chart. Okay, and we'll take a look at that in just a minute. And right above that, we have significant resistance. So since that, these layers of resistance are not very far away, and we've only really had 3 green days, and this day here looks really strong, right? It came down here and got bought right back up. So I don't think that Goldman Sachs is really ready for a pullback, even though it's right on this 61.8 fib. All right, so let me just clear those drawings, and we're going to hop over here to a weekly chart, and we will zoom out just a little bit. So you can clearly see that all of this price action here is being held up by this support level right here, which is the 211.15 area. Okay, so that's significant, right? That's a long time. That's a lot of price action that was held up over that level. So this level will absolutely be key. And you also see here's the 200 SMA on the weekly chart, right? So that's why I put that line there. So let me go back over to our daily chart here. What I think and what I like is that you do have kind of the 200 SMA and that major resistance sitting right there close together. So what I would like to see Goldman Sachs do is I would like to see it push up into this 211.15 area, and then look at possibly getting a pullback on it, at least down to the 61.8 fib. All right, so you'd be looking at about a 9-point pullback roughly. It really depends on how it reacts at that resistance level, but I don't expect that it's just going to blow right through it. If it does get over it before it wants to pull back, then you're going to have a pretty major descending trend line just above that. And that also falls right in line with the 200 period moving average here on the daily chart. Okay, so this is one of those things that, it could easily push way higher than we expect. Look at Netflix. It certainly did. So Goldman Sachs is no different. I've never traded Goldman Sachs, but just doing some technical analysis on it here, I am liking the possibility of looking at a short off of this 211.15 area. If that doesn't want to hold it down, then I would definitely look at getting a short off of this trend line in the 200 SMA. So we'll have to play the chart, just see how it reacts at that level. All you can do is try and take the trade and set your stop, and it works or it doesn't. But I think that a push up to that major resistance is a significant move, and most likely it would want to have some kind of a little pullback. Now, you could also possibly look at getting playing it both ways here. If the 61.8 fib can hold as support tomorrow and it wants to continue higher, you could easily grab it long and ride it up to the 200 SMA on the weekly chart, or maybe even the 211. I don't think it'll make that move in one day. It might take a couple of days, but I think by next week, by the end of next week, it's realistic that Goldman Sachs will make it up here to this 211 area. So I actually do like that idea. If we can hold over the 61.8 fib and push higher off of that, I'd look at grabbing it long, but just expect that you're going to have that resistance overhead. And if it rejects that, look at possibly flipping your bias, and you can catch a trade both sides on it. So I do like Goldman Sachs. I'm going to keep an eye on it, but I've never traded it. So, obviously I'll be cautious with it and see how it trades. MU. I like MU for a possible reversal here. It looks to me like it made a nice higher low right here. Okay, and you can see that actually MU has struggled with this 50 SMA for a long time. It tried to get over it way back here and couldn't hold over it. Tried to get over it here, couldn't even close over it. Tried to get over it here on a gap up, couldn't do it. And then more recently, right here, tried to get over it, couldn't do it. And then last Friday, we managed to close over it. All right, so, and we did that right off of a higher low here. So I think it's looking good for a possible push higher. I think the line in the sand for shorts who have been in this for a long time is going to be somewhere right in this area between the 50 SMA and this 3654, which is major resistance, and I can zoom out on the chart and show you that. So if we can actually get over this 3654 and hold that as support, we've got a nice pocket up to 3963 area, and above that we've got a nice pocket right up to the 38.2 fib. So MU could really get moving here, especially if shorts start getting squeezed out of this as it crosses through that line in the sand. Let me very quickly zoom out on the chart here and show you those areas. And I'm going to go to the weekly charts, probably a little bit easier to see that. But you can see the 3963 area I marked here. And it actually goes further back than that. Here's a pivot right here at 3654, okay? And then right here at 3390 is a possible area. The pivot is actually at 3654, but you can see this is clear resistance all throughout this area here at 3390, so that's why I went ahead and marked up those levels. So like I said, MU, it can get moving, especially with the amount of shorts that are probably still in MU. If it can get over that 3654 area, I would expect it to push into this pocket here. So I like it. I've got an alert set. I want to know if it gets over that, watch it and hold it as support and take it long. Otherwise, if it fails that 3654, you could possibly look at shorting it. But in my eyes, it's looking better as a long right now. Macy's significant sell-off after their last earnings. I guess it actually wasn't the earnings. It's supposed to be the earnings, I thought, but nevertheless, this is a huge gap down that that Macy's had, right, from on January 9 to January 10. Absolutely huge gap down and sold off a little bit lower. So I do have a fib drawn from the high of that day before the gap down to the low. Macy's is looking good for a bounce higher here. I've got so that with the fib drawn right there, you've got the 38.2 fib sitting right up here around the $27 area. I think realistically what Macy's is probably going to do is it's going to push up here to this 38.2 fib. Okay. Now, what I would like to see for a longer term reversal to the upside is an initial pullback off of that 38.2 fib, set in a higher low, and then push higher up to the 50 or the 61.8 fib, and then right above that you've got a descending trend line. Okay, so Macy's is looking good for a potential reversal here. I would expect it to push up to the 38.2 fib, pull back, make a higher low, and push higher if it wants to go higher. Okay, so it's on my watch list just because it's obviously made such a move down that thinking like a contrarian, I really think that it's got potential for a bit of a move higher, at least a 50% retracement of this move. Okay, so it's one that I'll be watching. USO is still on my list. I'm obviously choked. I took that off. It's still pushing up. The thing about USO is it is coming into some pretty big resistance here soon. You can see that actually on USO, the 38.2 fib's not until 1191. It's not a big mover. The problem with USO is if we look at the crude futures, it's coming into some major resistance here. Go to the weekly chart and zoom out a little bit. You can see right here all in this area, had a lot of trouble right there, and then tested it again here when the big sell-off happened, and we're bumping right into that now. So I don't like that the crude futures are actually already running into that resistance zone. So if the crude futures pull off of that resistance, then that means that USO will probably also pull back with it. So I've got it on my watch list still, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be necessarily taking a trade on it next week, but I'll just continue to watch it because oil could still see a recovery throughout 2019. And if it wants to break over that resistance, then it's possible it could easily continue to push higher. So we'll watch it and see what oil wants to do. Roku, I'm a little unsure about, but it does kind of look like it's trying to curl back up here. Roku had good news come out on this day with this huge gap, after this day with this huge gap up. What is kind of a bummer is I was actually looking at picking up Roku long-term in my IRA right around this area. And it looked like it had a nice basing. It was starting to curl up, and I just missed it literally by a day or two. So I'm still looking at it long term. Roku, I think, has potential as a company long term, to add to your portfolio. So we'll have to see, but it's it does have some resistance right overhead. You've got the 200 SMA sitting up there, and you've got the 38.2 fib. Okay, so, and it didn't quite get all the way up there. It ran into some resistance before it got there, but it does look like it's possibly curling back up. It managed to essentially hold the 50 SMA, try to break below it a couple of days, and quickly reclaimed it. It's just one that I'm going to watch. Roku is more of a long-term idea that for my portfolio than necessarily a trade idea, so that's why I do have it on the watch list so that I can continue to monitor it. I would like to get a better entry than this because of that overhead resistance you've got overhead. So that's why I have an alert set down here around the 39 area. So if it can dip down there and hold that, I might look at just adding a little bit into my portfolio, and we'll just have to see. But for a trade idea, I'm not sure on that one, honestly, because it does have that overhead resistance right there. We'll have to see. Roku can move, though, so it's one that you might want to watch. Tesla, finally, from my watch list here. The reason I'm watching Tesla is because it did have a significant sell-off this past Friday on bad news. Now, the problem with Tesla is it doesn't always respect technicals. It doesn't always respect Fibonacci's. So, although I did draw a fib from the high on Thursday to down here to this support area. Now, I know the way I drew this, it doesn't make sense because let me just zoom in a little bit here. So the way I drew this, I brought the fib down to this support level here around 294, because what I'm expecting it to do is continue selling off down to this level here tomorrow. Okay, so let me go to the weekly chart and we'll take a look at that. All right, so the reason that I have that level marked up, as you can see here, all of this price action for the most part, disregarding this here, held over the 294. Okay, so 294 is going to be pretty major resistance. If we break below that, we're going to have the 200 SMA on the weekly chart, and then we're going to have the 250 area, which so far has held support. Okay, so if we can't hold that 294, Tesla could easily fall apart and come down here to the 200 SMA. We've got a Fibonacci extension right around the 279 area and the 259 area. Okay, so the way I have the fib drawn now anyways. Now, the reason I did that, like I said, I drew that fib anticipating and purely anticipating that Tesla will probably sell off down here to the 294 area, which is going to be major support. All right. If it doesn't want to come down here to the 294 area, if it wants to hold that whole number right at 300, where I saw a whole bunch of people sitting on the bid on Friday, it could easily have a little retracement here. All right, so Tesla it's on the oversold side after the move it made yesterday, but Tesla can sell off way more than you would ever expect, as you can see here. Okay, so it could have a lot of big red dirty days. So it's one that you have to wait for confirmation. You can't just just take it at a support level and hope it holds. You've got to wait for a higher low off that support level to make sure that it is in fact trying to hold it with a stop just under it. And it's not one that I look at swing trading. I don't trust it more than just an intraday trade. All right, so tomorrow, if Tesla comes down and holds these lows around 300 and it wants to go higher, I will take it long there. Otherwise, I would want to see it come down and hold this major support just below that for a possible long. So I like Tesla as a long for a possible retracement, but it's based on the news that came out and their barely profitable earnings that they apparently are reporting for this that are coming up right here around the corner. It could still sell off. So it's on my watch list just because of the move that it made, but I'm going to play the chart. If it's a long, I'll take it long, right? If the 294, this major support fails, I'll definitely take it short, right? So we'll see what it does. So that's kind of my thoughts on the market, on my favorite stocks that I like to trade, as well as you know, a handful of stocks that I kind of liked their charts, and we'll just have to see how the market and how those stocks play out this coming week. It's a shorter week, obviously, with Monday being the market being closed, and sometimes shorter weeks are not really that stellar, but you know, it's we should still have plenty of trade opportunities. All right, guys, so I'm going to wrap it up there. I appreciate you watching as usual. Be sure and post in the comments below if you have any trade ideas, stocks that you're looking at. I'd always be interested to see what you guys are looking at. And if you have any questions, post those below, and I'll get to those as well. All right, thanks, guys. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.